Thank you for listening to this news brief. Followed this story a couple days ago about the interviews that were conducted at MSNBC, but surprisingly enough, because of the outcome of the Comey firing, which I really couldn't follow this, I really couldn't put it all together, honestly. I mean, I haven't been watching that much. I mean, I've been paying attention to other things, but I can't say that I followed the Comey story as much as I'd like to admit that, we follow a lot of news. I didn't see really what was going on here. And I actually had to take some time to really follow it last night. And it was a story it was really hard for me to follow because, I don't know how to explain it. But what I can say, knowing the position the role we took on regarding our position with the USS Carl Vinson, and seeing what was happening over the course of the last month and a half, this makes sense. This is why they're outraged, and I'm going to explain why. They're outraged. Most of these people have held these positions with these beautiful, wonderful labels. They're recognized in the public, status, pride, ego, all those things. You think about that. Think about what happens when somebody purposely goes out of the way to dismiss you. It'll push people's buttons. And I think what really happened here is that MSNBC and CNN were, President Trump presses their buttons and they press right back. And that's really what's going on here. Okay. So they're calling them names now because they're making decisions that any security team would have to make. If people start making these threats and comments, they're going to shut down the press briefing room, and they're not going to have that dirty place to do all their whatever. You know what I mean? And it's a dirty place, the press briefing room, bathroom. So I know that I heard this, and I'm picking up this from people who work in or around the Capitol. They are saying the same thing. You can't do security and then, it's one thing to have a press pass. It's one thing to be in a position where you have to make decisions. What security makes decisions? They have to make decisions that are not going to be fair in the eyes of the press. So what happened is President Trump's security team has shut media people out. MSNBC, CNN. And now they're pissed. And I don't watch enough Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski to know, but it's pretty obvious when people are pissed off. That's obvious. So, this is an overall security thing than it's anything else. It's not about freedom of press, and it looks to me like even since the beginning, they did not want him to be the president. They have signs, they have pins. He's not our president, and this just added to it. So it's just my opinion. It's obvious, and I share this belief with a lot of people, especially because I know there are people that are working around the Capitol that will say the same thing. Ever since over a month ago with the fence jumpers, everything changed. People were locked out, and that, I believe, is as a result. And you could see why people retaliate. And they're not used to it, honestly. I don't know that a lot of us were used to this. In fact, unfortunately, we got comfortable with the way things were done, and it was done wrong. Okay, that doesn't mean it's really hard to reverse the damage. And people are saying, well, President Trump didn't do this or didn't do that. But I have to tell you, the kind of danger we face when a government becomes tyrannical, it would be no wonder that people are afraid that our military carries guns, and all that fear-mongering that went on for the last 10 years, how Jade Helm and all that stuff, that was a reality for a lot of people, including ourselves. Okay, and I served in the military, and there were a lot of us were like, this is not how our military operates on a day-to-day basis. The people of America are not the threat. It's the threat within. There is a threat within, but it's not the people of America. I had people coming up to me. They were concerned that the military was going to arrest them. And that was a possibility. That is why many people came out in droves and voted for President Trump because he had to turn around the military too. I mean, there was so many problems in the military. There were decisions being made regarding the military that were not of the norm. When it came to uniforms, to the way people conducted themselves, I mean, overall conduct, you would get an Article 13 for the things that were being legalized in the military. That wasn't always how things were handled in the military. You never brought sex on issues on the base or therapy. I mean, you're talking about a very strict environment. You get on the base, there's a lot of things about being on a military base that were just not addressed. Now, that's not to say that there aren't concerns and issues. Please know that. But when you're talking about security concerns and people are bringing up all these other things that really have nothing to do with how people conduct themselves on a base or in uniform, because the idea that our military does not or wasn't allowed to carry gun, and as a veteran, I mean, to me, that is putting the military and the people overall in danger. And they want to take the gun rights off the veterans. That's why we're telling you about this, and we're going to discuss it, because in order to turn America around, and I don't have to convince any of you, some of you know a lot more than this, but they know. There are people that are afraid that our military would turn on the people. And you know what? That could have been a very big possibility. That is why everybody came out and voted for President Trump. That's why this is too important. Don't forget what happened over the last 10 years. And you could go back even 30 years. How our military's been compromised. There was a time that you could serve in the military, raise a family, and you never had to be concerned about an all-out war breaking out in America or worldwide. We used to hold a humanitarian position. These smaller countries relied on America, not because of military strength, but because of our reputation, because we were so reliable when it came to humanitarian aid. So to me, it's such a serious concern when these smaller countries used to look to America for humanitarian aid. And you heard that report over a month ago, how the UN, which is based in New York, okay, and you heard on the AP how these people would go in to these small little villages and they would molest and rape these children. That's horrifying. And you saw and heard the abuses. Our rule and our integrity in America, and especially because of our military, is real. People really rely on America's strength. That's why there was such a worldwide event when it came to this movement over the summer of 2016. I mean, summer 2017 is a whole different ballgame. But please don't forget why it is we're here today. Because they would want anything, use anything to oust President Trump, okay? And that was the whole point to why many of us came out. And I met with family and friends and people around me. They weren't unsure. You know why? Because that uncertainty should have never happened, but it did since before 9/11. We didn't live with that kind of uncertainty, okay? But now looking back and seeing what happened and some of the radio, TV programs we used to listen to, it's no wonder so many people were freaked out. I'm here to reassure you that our military has the best intentions with our country. And I have to tell you, the morale was destroyed through this. It literally was crippling our nation. Some of the toxic and intimidation that occurred not only just to our military, and it continues to happen, but just to the public. The public trust for government was at a 6% almost over a period of 10 years. That is incredible when you think in terms of trusting our military. I mean, I was wearing my uniform one time in BDUs on several occasions where I would go in a restaurant. They were afraid to shake my hand. It shouldn't have been that way. But that has started, that attitude towards the military has changed. And I can say this, not for nothing, a lot of things that George W. Bush didn't do right, that I didn't think he did right at all, honestly, but his relationship with the military, one of the best things, I think, one of the best attributes of George W. Bush. that he did show respect to the military. And I think that perception did change. But our military has been crippled. And I know many of us watched the news over the last 2 months. One of the things that really was, kind of troubling is what this whole thing was. I'm sorry if I couldn't follow the whole thing with James Comey, but to try to follow all this, it was a lot and it was overwhelming. But I can say this, and as we sat here, I did a report on this almost a month and a half ago about the USS Carl Vinson, but they wouldn't be making these decisions if they weren't trying to put our military back into a position of strength, number one, and as a role, playing a humanitarian role, primarily. I mean, but you have to, it's going to take a long time to get to where we need to be again. But it's not as if it's not happening. But the things we worried about didn't happen, thank God. But I would be concerned if you forgot what happened and how bad this was for so many people. And I think some people, we're not there anymore. But we could end up there and worse. And many people have been crippled by the economic struggles that came from this. And you just remember that as they keep hammering away at these insignificant, irrelevant topics. Because you know what's more important? Because as long as you have leaders and certain leaders that are behind President Trump and the decisions, this can turn around. It's not going to happen overnight. Many of us know that. You know that. But when the media is shut out of when they're going to start shutting down the press briefing room, you want to see the fangs come out, because this is about a credibility. And I'm not surprised that Joe Scarborough, who I don't follow very much, but I'm not surprised that he's calling them names and they're trying to create this mental health issue. That's how they play this, okay? That's been the problem. That's why they took guns away from veterans. I mean, there's a lot of veterans, including myself, that many of us know that a gun rights issue and they want to take away that authority which is given to you from the beginning. This wasn't our decision. These were laws that were in place long before many of us were born. But that's how they win. That's how they play this. They want to discredit their opposition, and we got to be smarter and wiser and know where they're at. They're in a position of weakness, and I believe at some point, and like I said, I don't know Joe Scarborough, I don't watch his TV show, I don't know Mika Brzezinski, but I'm not surprised that they're pissed off. And that's what it looks to a lot of us, is that they had a lot more privileges at one point, and when security shuts down the White House and they no longer have the same access, and when you saw all those fence jumpers, many of us were concerned. And I was watching that audio and that video from Dan Bongino. I'm sorry if I jacked up his name, but the whole point was because overall security. And since that point and what happened with our position in the Korean Peninsula, it's not surprising. It's pretty obvious that Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski not only don't like him, but they don't like the changes that have happened. And truly what happened here with the press and President Trump and his administration, or the ones at least that work with him, is there's an ideological war. They call it information war. I think it just comes down to ideological war. Political beliefs, worldview. One group believes opposite of the other group. So this is not uncommon for an ideological war, though.